Hello, welcome to the Divorce Couch. We hope you're ready with your notepads, with a drink. My name is Simone, and I'm the divorce coach based in Germany.
And hi, my name is Claire, and I'm a divorce coach based in Coleraine in the north of Ireland.
Hi, my name is Salma, and I'm a divorce coach based in London.
Today we have a beautiful topic. Who is driving your divorce? Setting boundaries within your support structure. We did talk about boundaries in the past, but we were referring the boundaries within your partnership or the one that is about to break up. And I think it is time that we are now looking at boundaries within your support structure. It could be with friends, it could be with your solicitor, it could be with divorce coaches, with consultants, anybody who is friends, who is guiding you along your path, but they all come in with their own agenda. And the question is, does it serve your personality and does it serve your very, very individual circumstance? So let's dive right in. Does anybody have something to say, a client, a personal experience to add to this?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, which we as divorce coaches, we often discuss with clients first and foremost is who is in your support structure, right? Because we can't do this alone, and we shouldn't be doing it alone, because it's already an incredibly lonely time where, you're battling with a lot of different emotions and circumstances that are very new. And, so first and foremost, I'm sure, as is with you both with new clients, is to look at who is within your support structure. How are we going to get through this together? And, we are part of that support structure. But I think where things become tricky is when you find yourself losing control of the direction that you're comfortable with. So, you're going to have advice coming in from your solicitor who it's like going to a doctor, right? We go to a doctor and we say, we've got this headache, etc. And we're very rarely are we inclined to question what the doctor's suggesting, because we've grown up thinking, well, this doctor's done however many years of training and education and treated all of these individual patients, so I'm not in a position to question. The doctor says take these tablets 3 times a day. I'm going to go home and take these tablets three times a day. So very often when we're leaning on these external support structures, your solicitor, your financial advisor, might even be your doctor that's you've gone to for help, or even coaches, right? And apart from that, we have parents, we have sisters and brothers and best friends and colleagues. All of this forms our support structure. And every single one of these people will have had a different take on life and on their views and how they formed, how they see the world, how they maneuver the world, and how they sort of their opinions and their ideas. And, all of this influence can really sometimes cloud what it is that we're actually trying to achieve here. And I think this is where this topic came from, is how much sort of control do you have over that?
Yeah I love the way you said the word what feels comfortable for you, because I think in a divorce journey or breakup journey there is so much that is not comfortable that sometimes it's hard to kind of figure out what you're feeling, because so much has changed, and any change will always create discomfort. That's the nature of change. And to grow, you have to step outside your comfort zone in order to grow. And part of a divorce journey is what is possible in the future. And to have something that's possible, that means change is going to come with it. So I love the concept of stories. And I would say that, everybody has their story about how they see the world. And I would say everybody has a story about how they see divorce. And having been married to a church minister in the past, one of the things that can be in those stories is people's faith, of whatever religion it happens to be, and what they feel or think that God says about divorce. And that will then influence their story of divorce, how they see it, and ultimately then influence if that happens to be your mum or if it happens to be your best friend. And so the advice they're giving you is coming from how they see their story. And sometimes what happens is, in the middle of that, your voice isn't heard because somebody doesn't know how to see past their story to hear your voice. And that's that sense of there's something just not sitting well.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of comfort and discomfort in this situation, and I think of advice that I've had in my own life, and when I look at my clients, I think, there's this sense of it just doesn't sit well, which is quite a good phrase that I think everybody that's human can identify with. It doesn't sit well. And I have 2 clients that I can think of straight away where we've looked at the issue and become curious about their solicitors, because they have felt their solicitors have, one of them felt the solicitor was driving them in a direction they didn't really want to go, because they thought the outworking of this pathway is going to be a lot of emotional distress, and they didn't really want that. Might have been a shorter route, but it was like, so when we unpacked how was this not sitting, why was it not sitting, what were the options, it turns out that there was another solicitor in the practice that was a collaborative lawyer, and the collaborative lawyer solicitor tries to keep things out of court. So that was an obvious pathway to go, well, is it worth having a conversation with that person? So sometimes it's worth becoming curious about what doesn't sit well, because when we have, as you so well said, Salma, about a doctor, there is a perception of, well, they're the doctor, like they have to know. And being a nurse, I know that a doctor is only as good as the doctor you get. So it depends on their experience, their training, their personality, and all the rest of it. And I have turned that into solicitors. It's the same thing. Yes, they know their role and they know the job that they're doing, but they come with their story, and they come with their story of how they think they should help you. But this idea of, it's not really sitting well, I don't really feel like you're representing me well, or whatever, that starting point of what doesn't sit well is usually worth listening to, because that can start some interesting conversations to find out, well, what do you actually want in the first place?
Yeah, that is what I thought immediately. It's about, what do you want in the first place? I think by the time somebody as important as a solicitor does something that doesn't sit well, is very late along the journey. So I think it is beautiful to then either get a second opinion before you then change the solicitor. It's kind of like when you get a diagnosis, right? You still can go to a second doctor to validate it, and before then change the solicitor. So I think to put you, if we say who is driving your divorce, and if it is you, and if you are the driver, and I think we have used this analogy before, if you have a map, you have to put in a goal. Where am I driving to?
Yeah.
And this is then picking up on your support team, Salma. It's important is, if you want to go here, who is in your support team? And it reminds me of a recent conversation I've had with my clients. She has had so many people in her life. She was drowning with all the information that everybody had because of their personal agenda. I think it's a very practical tip from us is just to have, maybe you should reduce your support team that you are giving the acceptance of bringing something towards you that is helping you to get where you want to go. So maybe it's just a handful.
I love this analogy of the map. And if I may, I want to tell you a really funny story,
please,
which really explains this. So a couple of years ago, I used to work in Canary Wharf, which is a part of London. And you go up Tower Bridge and there's this really confusing sort of layout of the road. So if you have to get in, you have to be in the right lane to go in the right direction. So once you get past a certain point, if you're in the wrong lane, you have to basically do a round loop. So I'm driving with my dad, and my dad lived in London all his life, always thinks that he knows the quickest, shortest, easiest route. And he's going to me, you're in the wrong lane, you're in the wrong lane. And I'm going, I had been working for this company for about 10 years at that point, and I'd done that journey numerous times, right, on my own. And on this occasion, we were coming back from somewhere. My dad was in the car, and it was gridlocked because it was around about 5:30, 6 o'clock. So being in the wrong lane was going to be a really, like, annoying, frustrating extra 45 minutes on our journey till we get round back to this road. And he's going, "You're in the wrong lane." I'm going, "Okay." So while I've got the opportunity, I pull into the lane that he wanted me to be in. Now, I knew what the right lane was. I had done this journey for the last 10 years, but I listened. And then when we got to the front, I was in the wrong lane. And he went, "Oh, you're in the wrong lane."
I love that analogy.
And
Wow.
the reason I'm giving this example is exactly what Simone said. Sometimes we know what the answer is, but this was somebody that I trusted, somebody that I looked up to. So even though I knew what the right lane was, because I had done that journey twice a day, every day for about 10 years.
Isn't that interesting?
For me, it suddenly became more important to think, well, actually, he's my dad, right? He knows, he's lived in London for 50, 60 years. He must be right. Even though every thought in my head was saying to me, you're going to have an extra 45 minutes on your journey while you do that loop around Tower Bridge again and get back to this road so you can turn left. And I think this is what happens when we're in a divorce. There's all these people around us that we want to desperately trust that are going to get us through this, that we stop listening to what's inside
ourselves. Yeah, that is very, very, very true. And part of what you had said, Simone, was maybe narrow down the support system that gets all the information. Because I remember back to, my story, and I probably told part of my story to too many people, because then I had too many different opinions. And everybody was well-meaning because everybody wanted the best for me.
Absolutely.
But actually, there is a lot of wisdom in not talking to too many people, because you get so many options thrown at you, you maybe find it hard to know what you want in the first place. Interestingly, what I find is when I look back at lots of my life, like loads of different decisions I've made, career pathways, all sorts of stuff, very often my starting point is actually knowing what I don't want. Mightn't be clear on what I do want, but I will know what I don't want. And, when I left A&E, I didn't want to stay doing night duty. It was exhausting me. I didn't want to stay in A&E. I loved it, but we didn't get meal breaks. I was doing 13-hour shifts. My kids were small. They never saw me. I thought, this is not what I want. But it took me nearly 2 years of looking to find what I did want. And as soon as I saw it, it was like, that's what I want. And so if there is this unsettlement, this sort of, not sitting well, notice that and go, what is that? Because maybe that's the start of you knowing what you don't want. And that is a really good starting point if you don't know what you do want. Find out what is it about what this person is saying, because it's maybe nothing to do with the person, but whatever they're suggesting as a good option or advice is just not sitting well. And start to become curious about that, because curiosity is how we get to find out who we are and what's important and what our values are. And we don't really realize that so many people have different values to us, but actually the best placed person to know what's in your best interest is you. It is you.
Yes.
Can I, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No,
I think I would like to add to this, whereas you have just spoken so correctly about the emotional part, there's also something quite factually about an individual divorce journey. It is very easy for, let's say, for a lawyer to just keep on fighting because they might have an idea what could eventually happen. But if your financially means won't let you get to that point, you might also want to consider then saying, okay, I hear you, but I feel no longer comfortable going to a point where I have no more rainy day funds, because now I'm investing everything into a process, classically a process that I don't want to do. Sadly, though, is this not when you have a power play, what's happening, right? I deplete the other person, and by the time you are that depleted, I know that you will come to the table and I have you where you probably didn't want to go at the beginning. But still, I think maybe we have to have this depletion journey, if I might say, to then come to the conclusion afterwards, now I'm ready. I didn't believe that I would at one point be willing to settle for this. But if the reality shows you that this is not working the way theoretically it should have, the best case scenario, let's say, then
exactly.
we just have to make these experiences to then say, okay, well, now I have come to the conclusion, now I want it out, but I fought hard and square. But I think a solicitor very often, because you know what, they make money with every year that they fight harder for you, and they are not emotionally attached. They don't know what it feels like if you are actually going on empty. So this is important too, you know, to be able to say, no, I no longer want to go on like this.
Yeah. And also you need to take into account your personality as well, right? Because not every path is going to be what you want to do. You know, I'm not a very conflictual person, and I would much rather, and I'm not ashamed to say this, it's not something that, you know, for me to say, actually, I'm quite happy to cut a deal and move on, because I don't want to go through all of this ruckus with, you know, going to, you know, the courts or having these conversations. I'd rather not play that. I'm not that person. So other people, you know, when other people around you, like your solicitor might be saying, okay, no, we're going to play the long game here, right? We're going to, you know, keep going. There's all these emails going back and forth, this and that. But if that's not the person that you are, if you don't have that kind of fight in you, don't do it. No. I'm not saying you lay your back. I'm not saying that you just say, oh, I'm not going to fight at all. But know when you are at the end. Like you said, you know, when we're talking about depleting, we're not only talking about depleting finances, we're talking about depleting energy. We're talking about depleting your self-confidence, your self-esteem. When, you know, and you need to decide, when is enough enough?
There is, you know what, there is this saying, this is, nothing is more comfortable than having fallen to rock bottom. If you are at rock bottom and you know this cannot go on any longer, then you can slowly grow again. But I think sometimes solicitors don't see that. The spiral downwards is just never ending. There is so much more in family court that you could do. Let's do this, let's do that. And you know what, find your own rock bottom. When is enough? When you say, you know what,
it's like,
I want to stand up again.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I equate that to, we did IVF for years, and, you know, we had to decide if we didn't have children through IVF, what was going to be our cutoff line, because we could have gone on and on and on to the point where we were exhausted and not ever present with each other at any point. So we had to decide for us as a couple, what was our line in the sand. And that was quite empowering, because I remember thinking, okay, so we've put out this, and that's our line in the sand. And if we get to that point, we will cross that bridge if and when we get to it. But that actually felt quite empowering to have made a decision. And I think on a divorce journey, we lose our sense of control so much, especially if this is a journey that you haven't wanted. You know, if somebody has an affair and leaves you and you haven't actually wanted to be here, that sense of control is kind of taken away from you, because somebody's saying, no, I don't want to do counseling. No, I don't want to do that. No. So part of this journey is, how do you find who you are, to find your voice, to find your sense of control in the middle of it. And this area that we're talking about today is really, really important, because this is a chance and an opportunity for you to find out what actually is important to you.
Yeah.
Is it important?
I have just something so beautiful. Can I just jump in? And I know that I do this all the time. All the viewers that say, here she is jumping again. Sorry.
Jump away.
Do you know what I just thought? And this is so beautiful. So if you are, let's change perspective. It's not the person that has been cheated on. What if you are the cheater? And if we look at the word driving again, so you're in the driver's seat. Do you have a term in English which is called driving in a convoy? So basically you have two cars going behind another, going somewhere. How beautiful. I'm just having this image now. If you are the one who left and you had an affair, try to get out in a convoy, have and wait the other person to be the driver in their car, and then drive out together, and don't, you know what, zoom ahead. And you know what, I'm the first, I've just reached my wherever I wanted to go, and look behind, and you have left the other person who's now lost. Is it, well, I don't know, how am I going to get there? But then you can also be the person who says, okay, well, I take the responsibility, I'm having the boundaries, without now being maybe pushed by my affair, or a friend who says, oh, that's great, you're just going to go to the lawyer, you don't have to pay. You know what, you too have the ability to have the boundaries of not going and arriving at your own future, leaving the other people behind. And I just thought, when you spoke, Claire, it sounds like it's a convoy, right? You can both drive in separate cars and make sure that both parties have their boundaries, so they arrive safely. You know what, quoting you know what, the line in the sand is, you know what, I don't want to leave anybody behind.
Yeah. And I don't want to create more upset than I need to, or that I need to protect myself in a certain way, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, I mean, every person on a divorce or breakup journey, regardless of the reason and the cause, everybody ends up broken some which way. It's just what happens. And whether you decide to be the person who says that's it, we're done, or not, you still have to find your way from that point into a new life. And this is an opportunity to find out what's important to you, and maybe in a way that you've never had a voice before because you haven't been able to, for whatever the circumstances are. But this is a chance that you can change that. And that is an opportunity that is really worth grabbing onto with every hand. So if you feel this disconnection or tension or something, don't ignore it. You know, and actually, I am going to throw in, seeing as we are divorce coaches, having someone like us in your support team to ask you questions in a safe space to figure out, why is that not sitting well? What's important to you? If it's a parent, you might need a bit of extra support to be able to go, is it okay? So the likes of you, Salma, is it okay not to take my dad's advice? Is that okay? I've never done that before.
Never thought about it.
Yes, and maybe doing that on your own is really hard, but maybe with somebody in your support team to help you to find how to stand up that little bit taller just for you is something that would make all the difference on your journey.
And I think, just, you know, with boundaries, it's to protect us. It's not to hurt somebody else. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, I talk to clients a lot about is that when you set a boundary, you're putting yourself first. You're telling yourself, actually, you know, this thing that's going on inside me, this thing that's confusing me, this thing that's actually hurting me, I'm going to give myself some importance and listen and put something in place to protect me, and say, actually, I want to hear what I've got to say. And that doesn't mean, you know, that we're insinuating that our solicitor doesn't know what she's doing or he is doing. We're not saying that our parents are wrong. We're not saying that our sisters are putting their nose in a place where it's not invited. We're not saying any of those things, right? What we're saying is, I need a moment to decide option A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we'll have all of these options. Which one is right for me? Because there's no like sort of standard template for how a divorce is going to pan out, right? We don't decide to get divorced and then go and buy a manual from the shop, although I'm sure there's loads available, right? But it's not a one sort of template that's going to work across the board. These are, you know, in two individual people with different values, with different life sort of experiences, with different future goals, that there's not going to be any other two people in the whole entire world that are the same as those two people. So advice is just exactly what it is. Advice. It's an opinion based on somebody else's life experiences. So don't feel that you're not allowed to say or question or say, I need to think about that, or actually I'll come back to you.
Two practical questions before we finish. It's crazy how fast these half hours go. One is, people do offer it's a very German thing, right? They're very quick to offer you tips and advice and everything. How do you practically decline and say no? Do you have an idea? How would you equip your client, when they say, yeah, but then they just come and
I think a great line is, thank you so much for your advice. I'm definitely going to take that into account, because that's actually what we're doing. We're saying, okay, that could be an option, but what I'm not going to commit to right now is that is the only option.
Yeah.
So that way we're not rejecting that advice. What we're saying to that person is, that's a really great sort of perspective.
That's that pressing the pause button, isn't it?
Yeah.
You press the pause button and go, I'm going to take time. Just before you ask your second question, Simone, one of the things that popped into my head was, I've read lots about boundaries and I've put lots in practice. But my favorite definition of boundaries is how to love me well in order to love others.
Mm.
And I love that definition because it's quite soft. So when you're asking that question about somebody else giving you advice, especially if it's someone you know, how do I love me well in order to love others? That answer, Salma, is not going to cause upset or frustration, because you're saying, I appreciate that. I'm just going to spend time thinking about it. And that is what, for me, loving me well looks like. It looks like that to somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it makes sense. And it really ties into the second question. Not everybody out there is able to say, this is what loving me looks like. I think, but not everybody has a personality, depending on the way they were brought up, where they learn that I can trust putting me first. So I think it's very helpful to then just have a sentence in the pocket, because but if it doesn't come naturally from within you to say no, actually not, then just remembering or reminding there is this one sentence that helps me, kind of like a crutch, to say, no, thank you, and I'm going to think about it. And then just what we have, I don't know, maybe we don't have enough time, but I was just wondering if somebody is growing up not knowing how to have boundaries because they're overly empathetic. It was always about the people around them. That's really, really difficult. Do you have a little exercise where they can slowly grow into finding a voice to become independent that we can give our viewers?
I quite like the idea of talking to a mirror. I quite like the idea of talking out loud. When we talk out loud, our whole nervous system hears it. So rather than just thinking, I don't know what you guys are like, but I think conversations in my head. Oh, he said this and I'd say this, and I go over and back. When you say something out loud, your ears and your nervous system hear it. They hear your voice saying it. So I would very often with my clients say, now let's role play this and practice it. And it's not because I want to hear it. It's because they will get to hear their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something about that. It's how do you say something that you're not comfortable with to somebody else? Well, you practice by saying it to yourself so you can hear yourself say it, so it becomes less uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And then there is a much higher chance that you're going to manage your emotions to be able to say it to someone. Listening to what you said, Simone, I actually used the notes section in my iPhone, and I had one or two sentences in my iPhone, and I would look them up sometimes and go, I need to remember that. And that's how I find I remembered, because I always had my phone with me. It was like this pop-up, what do I need to remind myself of? But that idea of saying it out loud, to hear yourself saying it, it embeds something internally that creates a confidence and a strength, and maybe I can say this. So that's something I would suggest.
Yeah.
I would always, I think when you're in those early stages of not having a voice, because I've definitely been there, is to practice again, whether it's out loud or whether it's in a journal, and practice. You kind of play back scenarios that conversations that you've had. And we always have this thing, which is what we refer to as hindsight. Oh, I wish I'd said that. I wish I'd done this. Oh, if I would have, I wish I'd been brave enough to say that. Fine. Write it down. Right? Next time you're faced with this situation, how could you, this is one of the tools that I've given one of my clients. It's a homework for this weekend, is, because she has this constant feeling that she's stepping into her adopted child. And we went through this. Okay, fine, we all do it. I do it all the time, right? Now so her homework for this week is to, at the end of the day, is to write down what moments she felt that she had stepped in or out of her adult into her adoptive child. Right. And this is not a blame game. This is not to say, oh, you stupid woman, you've done it again. You've just behaved like a child. It was like, okay, once we identify what moments we felt that we did not behave in the way that we wanted to, then the next part I want you to write down is, how would your adult have behaved in that situation?
Oh, that's a nice one as well. That.
Because then what we're doing is we're kind of it's all well and good saying, well, I don't want you to do this. But okay, I get it. You don't want me to behave like this. And this is a conversation I have with myself all the time. Don't want you to do that. But what do you want me to do? Make that obvious. Make that real. Write it down. Role play it. Practice it. Right? And then the more you practice it, the more you have those ideas in your head that actually, I could maybe say this. I could maybe say that. If it's there, you're more likely to, at some opportunity,
yeah, I agree,
use it.
Yeah. This is one for those who lack a voice, for whom the boundary setting is really difficult. This is one where I say, get a coach. They'll champion for you. They will be there and champion you and help you. And most likely, if you don't have a voice, that's because you probably didn't have one to begin with. And this is what coaches give you. It doesn't have to be as a relationship that is done after 3 sessions. Sometimes it's only 3 sessions. But if you really need time to find your voice, to arrive in your future, I think this is one of the most beautiful jobs that we have. And sometimes it takes longer, but we'll be there, right? We champion you, stand on the sideline and help you and allow you to have a voice and make you feel safe.
Yeah. And can I just say, finding your voice is it's just such a groundbreaking moment. I feel like the day that I found my voice, it was like
freedom, isn't it?
My God, what just happened there? It's like suddenly I had become this new person. However, it's not just about finding your voice, because you can find your voice and you can have that aha moment where you think, oh my God, I've just stood up for myself. I've got this boundary in place. Actually, what you then want to be able to do, which is where, reading the book on boundary and doing the research and working with a coach, all of these things then help us with, is how are you now going to then harness that newfound power that you probably have no idea what to do because you spent your whole life or your whole relationship without a voice. Then how do you do that? So there's that then ongoing work that, right, how do I now put this into process?
You go back to our video, start with minute 3 and look at the
having that voice and learning how to use it is 2 different things, right?
So I felt it was important that we say, sometimes, and I understand that when we are going live and we have something to say, there's so many different personalities, and sometimes it will immediately pick up one, but the other one we might leave behind because they say, no, I don't know what you're talking about because I don't even know what it means to have a boundary. Yeah. So we're done. The half hour is over. I hope we covered from A to Z as much as we can possibly give you in half an hour to set the boundaries. Wrapping up is basically ask yourself when it's about boundaries is something to do with decisions that have to be made. Are you comfortable, whatever is thrown at you, does it make you feel comfortable, or does it immediately not sit well with you? I think we have usually a very good, clear compass in your stomach. Where does it manifest? Does it give you a tingle? Does your heart race? And if that's the case, then this is where the work begins. It might help if you, at the beginning, if you are overwhelmed with everything being thrown at you, try to reduce the support team that is coming along your ride until you have the capacity again, or you yourself then make the decision, now I want to ask somebody else because I'm not so sure. Maybe I need a second diagnosis or a second idea. I love Claire's saying is what is the line in your sand? This will also help you to figure out, where's your boundary and where's an end. And that's the boundary, right? The boundary means, okay, I'm not willing to go further. And then you own that decision. And I think this is what it's about, right? To have a boundary is owning, what does this now mean for me? We will, in the end, have our takeaways again. If I forgot wrapping up one or the other things that we talked about, thank you very much. Like and subscribe, and if you want to send us an email or a comment. And I love being on the couch. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.